Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you tonight. Interest rates are likely to stay higher for longer. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das rules out any rate cuts in the near term. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says inflation continues to remain too high. Ahead of elections, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says the government doesn't want to be profligate, adds North Bloc is conscious of the debt burden and is looking at ways to bring the overall debt level lower. Israel's relentless bombing campaign of Gaza continues. President Biden draws a link between Putin and Hamas, promises military and humanitarian aid. Residents of Gaza are without food, electricity and water. UN Secretary General reaches the Egypt border, says time is running out for people of Gaza and trucks carrying aid must move in quickly. JSW Steel beats estimates in Q2 with a revenue growth of nearly 7%. Margins expand to nearly 18%. Paytm cuts its losses by nearly 50% to 292 crore rupees. Revenues crossed 2,500 crore rupees, clocking a growth rate of 32%. After global airlines, container shipping companies face the GST heat. Sources say GST intelligence wing has accused Indian offices of global companies of tax evasion to the tune of 1.5 lakh crore rupees. Shipping companies meet finance ministry officials seeking intervention. That's an exclusive. Canada recalls 41 diplomats after India revokes their diplomatic immunity. Canada also halts visa and consular services in Chandigarh, Mumbai and Bengaluru. Canada has accused India of killing a Sikh separatist on its soil. India has denied the charge. The Delhi government approves its new EV policy for cab aggregators and delivery service providers. The Transport Minister Kailash Gehlot tells CNBC-TV18 all cabs will have to transition to electric by 2030, says there is no plan to disrupt the CNG infrastructure immediately, but city gas distribution companies tank in trade. The Supreme Court ruling that a double taxation avoidance agreement cannot be enforced unless notified may lead to reopening of tax assessments of previous years. Tax experts believe that MNC is approaching tax authorities and asking them to revisit the withholding tax arrangement could be a recourse. The Supreme Court pulls up the government over pending appointments of judges, tells the centre to process the names before Diwali and allows 2 weeks to finalise the collegium's recommendations. Mumbai's air quality remains worse than Delhi. Civic body BMC threatens to halt all construction in the city, orders 6,000 construction sites to install sprinklers within 2 weeks and cover the sites with 35 feet sheets. Well, pollution woes from Delhi to Mumbai, but let's start with the market action this evening. It's been a tepid Friday, and that capped a lackluster week on the Lal Street. The sensex and the nifty ending the day in the red. For the week, both indices have lost about 1%, reversing gains posted for the last 2 weeks. Now, all sectoral indices ended in the red, barring the auto index, and that was the story of the week. So the sensex down to 30 points for the day, the nifty down by about 82, the nifty bank and the nifty IT index also closing in the red. A key reason for the weakness that we're seeing in the markets is the continued rise in oil prices. Brent crude prices hitting $93 a barrel, and that is on the back of fears of a prolonged conflict between Israel and Hamas. The US decision to refill its strategic reserves also leading to a rise in crude prices. Another reason for the weakness in our markets, the fears that interest rates may stay higher for longer. US Federal Chairman Jerome Powell has acknowledged that inflation is cooling. However, he's also reiterated the Fed's commitment to bring inflation down to 2% as it was still too high. Speaking at an event in New York, Powell warned that lower economic growth was likely needed to tame the stubbornly high inflation. Powell's comments led to the 10-year US Treasury yields briefly topping 5% for the first time since July of 2007. Hours after Powell's statements, RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das, addressing the Kautilya Economic Conclave 2023, said that interest rates will remain high for longer. However, the manner in which the world evolves will determine how long they will stay this way. Take a look.
We all write down our estimates of the longer run neutral rate every quarter in the summary of economic projections. And that's based on models. It's based on also looking out the window and including lags, thinking how are our current rates affecting the economy. So the evidence of your eyes is that the economy is handling much higher rates, at least for now, without difficulty. So notionally, that might tell you that the neutral rate has risen, or it may just tell you that we haven't had rates high enough for long enough.
as it looks, the interest rates are going to be high. But how these economies are going to play out next year in terms of their growth, because if growth slows down, that also creates other challenges for for financial stability. So I would not venture to say that, I would not venture to say that how long these interest rates will be high. But let me make it very clear to my media friends, I am not giving a forward guidance so far as our interest rates are concerned. If you take a cue that Reserve Bank is thinking of reducing interest rates, sorry, there is no such agenda at the moment. Interest rates will remain high. How long they will remain high, I think only time and the way the world is evolving will tell.
Higher for longer between what we heard from the Fed chief as well as the RBI governor. That seems to be the story. Now, the RBI has also released the minutes of the October monetary policy meeting. The minutes highlight that fears of inflation are far from over. Lata standing by now to take us through the highlights of what the MPC minutes reveal. Lata.
Yes, I think one of the key takeaways from the monetary policy minutes is that the three Reserve Bank of India members in the MPC are clearly worried that persistent supply-side inflation pressures can disturb the long-term inflation expectations. You know, although all members agreed that the Reserve Bank surveys indicating that inflation expectations of consumers, of households, is dipping both for 3 months ahead and 1 year ahead. The three RBI members, Governor in particular, and actually DG Patra as well, very emphatically and vocally, points out that recurrent episodes of high inflation, like say tomatoes or fuel because of the war, or oilseeds because of the Ukraine war, if they come with such ferocity and such frequency, it can affect inflation expectations, the long-term flow of inflation, trend of inflation, and this in turn can impact growth. You know, consumers are not spending on discretionary goods because inflation is high and they are uncertain about whether they can spend their money. So the thrust clearly seems to be that we have to go hammer and tongs at inflation. Although the external members didn't seem so hawkish in the minutes, when they spoke on the CNBC-TV18 channel, they all agreed that until inflation comes sustainably towards 4%, one should not even think about rate cuts. So that is the big message to the market. The Reserve Bank highly worried about episodic rises in inflation. Another very quick point, because of Indonesia raising interest rates to counter the rise in US yields, there is a chatter in the market whether India will have to do that. That's not something which at least external member Ashima Goyal was happy with. She said that that is not comparable and India is not in the same situation. But that, I think, is also what the Reserve Bank believes. If at all it hikes rates, it will be for domestic reasons, not for external reasons.
You know, Indonesia during the taper tantrum had such large interest rate volatility because they freely allowed or liberally allowed local currency, borrowing bonds. While in India, it was more a policy decision to raise rates. It was not because of the interest differential. So, and I think we've seen this again and again through the last 2 years, this fears that Indian rates have to follow the US. And we've demonstrated that when we have the freedom, we have buffers, we have the freedom to, to intervene in currency markets to prevent excess volatility, then and we are able to keep our interest rates attuned to our domestic cycle growth and inflation, then the country has done well.
The forecasts are important, projections are important. So I think getting back to under 5% is one, obviously, one criteria. But I guess it is also important that growth is sustained. So I guess I would not put a timeline to this. I mean, it's important that we see the inflation rates going down in a sort of sustained manner.
What matters is the broader pace of inflation, and what matters is whether monetary policy is sufficiently restrictive to keep bringing inflation down. And I think it is, and the effect is being seen that it is moderating demand. It is bringing inflation down. It is anchoring inflation expectations, and that is what is required, and that is what is going on. And we have to persist with that until it comes towards the target.
Well, MPC members speaking there on the road ahead. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that the government does not want to be profligate and burden future generations with today's debt. Speaking at an event, the Finance Minister said that the government is conscious of its debt burden and is looking at ways to bring the overall amount down. She did add that the government's efforts are very streamlined and it is actively looking at how other economies are managing their debt levels. Take a look.
We are conscious of what burden it is going to leave the next generations. It's very easy to be profligate and burden the coming generations with the debt that you will be sitting with. We are conscious of the debt of Government of India today. Compared to many others, it might not be as high as it is. But even there, we are consciously looking at experiments in different parts of the world. And again, some of the data about some emerging market countries, about how they are managing their debt, is something which is actively in our minds in the ministry. And we are looking at ways in which we can bring down the overall debt.
Well, that's the Finance Minister. Let's now shift our focus to earnings today. JSW Steel posting a strong number, reporting a beat across most parameters, and this was largely led by lower input costs. On an annual basis, the company's revenue grew more than 6% and it reported a profit of more than 2,700 crore rupees against a loss of 900 crore rupees last year. So that is a JSW Steel for you. Moving on now to Paytm. Paytm's net losses for the second quarter have narrowed by 49% compared to last year. This on the back of a 122% growth in loans disbursed during the quarter. In fact, the digital payments firm has also reported a 32% growth in revenue. That is year on year. Revenue was above 2,500 crore rupees. That's Paytm's scorecard for you. Globally, Microsoft reporting a 39% increase in annual revenue from India. Revenue was near 14,000 crore rupees for FY23. Profits rose 30% to about 650 crore rupees. Meanwhile, Microsoft's LinkedIn has announced that it is laying off about 700 employees across engineering products and other departments. It's been overnight. The airstrikes hit an Orthodox Greek church in Gaza, which was sheltering around 500 Palestinians. Meanwhile, Egypt is clearing the way for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza through the Rafah border. The border road is being repaired after incessant bombing by Israel. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressing the media in front of the Rafah crossing. He said the trucks gearing up to enter Gaza are the difference between life and death for many. Israel's defense minister has hinted at a ground offensive in Gaza. He said the troops will soon see Gaza from the inside. Israel's economy minister told an American broadcaster that the military has a green light to move into Gaza whenever it is ready. The Israel army also claims to have killed terrorists in an airstrike in West Bank's Nur Shams. As per the Palestinian Health Ministry, 13 people, including 5 children, were killed in these strikes. US President Biden, addressing the country from the Oval Office, outlined America's plans of extending aid and security to war-torn Israel and Ukraine. He also drew a direct link between Russia and Hamas, saying that they both want to annihilate a neighboring democracy.
Tomorrow, I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine. Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it.
It is impossible to be here and not to feel a broken heart. We are looking for convoys to be authorized in a meaningful numbers of trucks to go every day into Gaza.
The UN Secretary General there. Let's shift our focus now to the ongoing diplomatic tussle between Canada and India. The Canadian government has announced that it is withdrawing 41 diplomats from India. The Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has said that only 21 officials have been left behind in the Canadian embassy and consulates in India. The Canadian minister also said that India threatened to revoke the diplomats' official status by Friday unless they left the country, calling the move unreasonable and unprecedented. Also citing that India has clearly violated the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. The Canadian government has also halted all in-person services at its consulates in Mumbai, Bengaluru and Chandigarh. The government has also updated its travel advisory for its citizens in India, asking them to exercise a high degree of caution. Meanwhile, India and the UK are trying to conclude the delayed free trade agreement talks by Diwali. However, sources have told CNBC-TV18 that both countries have differences over certain aspects. Parikshit is standing by now to take us through where things stand. Parikshit, are we likely to see a conclusion of talks ahead of Diwali or by Diwali?
Well, there is an intent, but no conclusion of talks yet. There are still sticky issues, and those include differences over tariffs on alcohol and Scotch whisky, rules of origin and visas for professionals. And both sides are trying to thrash these issues out. We also learned that internal discussions are on within governments of India and UK on how to resolve this at the earliest, and certain business houses and chambers have also been consulted. We have no clarity as yet from the Indian government or UK whether the deal will be concluded anytime soon or will there be a formal announcement. At the same time, the UK Department for Trade has told CNBC-TV18 that both countries continue to work towards an ambitious trade deal, but UK will sign a deal that is fair, balanced and ultimately in the best interest of the British economy. UK government sources said they cannot comment on live negotiations. They will also not comment on whether there will be a visit by Rishi Sunak or not. That will be announced by the Prime Minister's office. So far, no visit has been announced. What the Trade Office is telling us, that negotiations are now in the most complex phase, dealing with goods, services and investments as well. And the hardest part of talks always takes place in the end. So we are in the most complicated phase of the India-UK FTA negotiations. While there is intent to finish this as soon as possible, no one can say with any clarity how soon it will happen.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. So still uncertainty there over the conclusion of the UK-India FTA. But on to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. After global airlines, container shipping companies are facing the GST heat. Sources tell us the GST intelligence wing has alleged that Indian offices of global companies have allegedly evaded tax to the tune of 1.5 lakh crore rupees. Timsy standing by with the details. Timsy, that's a large sum that the GST intelligence wing alleges has been evaded.
Well, in yet another case of curbing GST evasion, DGGI Ahmedabad has alleged 1.2 to 1.5 lakh crore of tax evasion by shipping liners. However, shipping liners have given detailed representation to Finance Ministry, CBIC, DGGI and are seeking a resolution. But according to DGGI, shipping liners are operating via a branch office in India and have evaded taxes on import of services from head office located abroad. Shipping liners get their operational costs such as lease rental, fuel charges, crew charges, etc. to the head office located abroad and don't charge the cost of these services to their branch office. Under the GST law, an establishment of a company in India and outside India are treated distinct persons, and any service provided by head office to branch office is deemed as a supply even when it is without any consideration. Recently, remember, DGGI had conducted searches at foreign airlines on similar allegation. Given that under the GST law, any import of service is liable to tax even if the imported services are without consideration, and the recent circular issued by CBIC in July 2023 also may not come to the rescue of these shipping liners, as in some cases there have been exempted services provided by the liners. Further, the argument of revenue neutrality may also not suffice in the present case, looking into the judgments in the service tax era where these liners are supposed to pay taxes. So let's see what happens finally once this entire case gets clarified as to how much of a show cause notice gets issued to these shipping liners. Back to you.
Well, notice after notice across sectors. Timsy, many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, Mumbai's air quality remains worse than Delhi. The civic body BMC threatens to halt all construction in the city. That and more when we return. You can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on WhatsApp, Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Well, the Delhi government has approved its new EV policy for cab aggregators and delivery service providers. Transport Minister Kailash Gehlot told CNBC-TV18 in an interview that all cabs will have to transition to electric by 2030. He also said that there is no plan to disrupt the CNG infrastructure and that 10% of the total vehicles in Delhi are electric vehicles already. Take a look.
Beyond 2030, all the vehicles which are in the fleet of aggregators, whether in the passenger category or in the delivery, they have to be electric. If you are adding a new vehicle to the fleet, so suppose if somebody already has 100 vehicles and if they are going to add one more or two, then some percentage of it has to be electric. But by the end of the 4th year, if you are going to increase your fleet size, then that has to be electric vehicle only.
That's Delhi's Transport Minister on the transition to electric vehicles. Debt-ridden airline SpiceJet says the company has deposited its payment to Credit Suisse as per the Supreme Court's direction. The Supreme Court has said it will review the process of the monthly payments and will hear the matter after Diwali. Remember, the Apex Court had directed SpiceJet to pay Credit Suisse $1 million every month till March 2024 and $500,000 per month thereafter. Now, the Supreme Court has given the centre 2 weeks to decide on names recommended by the Collegium for appointment of judges. The Apex Court pulled up the centre for the delay, urging it to process recommendations before Diwali. The top court noting that 5 names recommended by the Collegium are pending with the centre, apart from 11 other recommendations for transfer. India is now home to 4 of the world's top 5 two-wheeler makers. TVS Motors has just surpassed Yamaha in market cap, becoming the 3rd largest two-wheeler maker globally. Yusuf is here with the details. Yusuf.
TVS Motor, which was less than half the size of Yamaha Motor about 17 months ago, has overtaken the Japanese two-wheeler giant in market valuation. This comes as investors continue to bet on a revival in both domestic and export markets. Over the last 6 months, the market capitalization of TVS Motor has surged over 40% to $9.2 billion. In contrast, Yamaha witnessed a market cap erosion to the tune of $1.6 billion since its August high. As of today's close, Yamaha Motor had an NCAP of $8.8 billion, which is about $300 million lower than that of TVS Motor. Interestingly, Indian companies make up 4 of the top 5 two-wheelers makers in the world, while Bajaj Auto tops the list with a market valuation of $19 billion. Eicher Motor comes second with $11.5 billion, whereas Hero MotoCorp occupies 5th rank with a market valuation of close to $8 billion.
Well, that's interesting and certainly great news there as far as Indian two-wheeler makers are concerned. Yusuf, many thanks for joining us. What is not good news is what's happening in Mumbai. It's been witnessing a rapid deterioration in its air quality over the past week. In fact, air quality in Mumbai remains worse than Delhi over the last few days. Mumbai civic body, the BMC, has announced new measures to curb pollution. Rachna joins us now with more details. Rachna, what is the BMC proposing? What measures does it plan to take?
Well, after a week of the city being engulfed in smog and haze, so much so that the AQI in some areas breached the level of 300, that indicates hazardous air quality, the BMC is now coming up with guidelines for builders and developers. Now, rampant construction and infrastructure development that is taking place across the city is one of the many reasons that has led to this environmental crisis. So the BMC will be making it mandatory for developers to enclose the under construction sites with 35 feet high sheets to prevent dust in the air. The entire structure now will have to be covered with a cloth. The BMC will also direct the developers to install sprinklers at the site, and the timeline to implement this is 10 to 15 days starting Monday. The guidelines were a product of a joint review held by BMC Commissioner and Administrator Iqbal Singh Chahal with government as well as private stakeholders. This meeting saw representation from CREDAI, Mahada, Nariadco, MIDC, SRA and more. Now, just for context, apart from the metro and coastal road construction, there are about 6,000 under construction projects across the city. Apart from this, we at CNBC-TV18 had earlier reported that the BMC has formed task forces for every ward in the city that will be focusing on burning of solid waste and emission levels coming out of refineries, big kitchens, bakeries, and even housing societies. This is the second year in a row where Mumbai is witnessing such deterioration in AQI. And apart from construction activities, change in climate is another big reason. As Mumbai is a coastal city, the winds coming out of the sea usually clear out the pollution. But this year, a deficient monsoon and stoppage of airflow has led to the city witnessing a second summer and a bad AQI at the same time. This has even led to citizens reporting of bad throat, chest congestion, and even bronchitis in some parts, which is why the BMC has issued guidelines suggesting usage of N95 masks and to avoid outdoor exercises in the morning.
Rachna, many thanks for joining us. So pollution continues to plague our cities from Mumbai to Delhi. There's just 3 months to go for Tamil Nadu's Global Investor Summit, and the state expects to keep funds flowing into it, directed largely towards the manufacturing, energy and logistics sectors. Jude Sanith reports that while manufacturing will still be the largest draw, the Global Capability Centre or GCC market is fast emerging as a new asset class.
French glassmaker Saint-Gobain gave Tamil Nadu its biggest investment this year, promising 3,400 crore rupees to take its total investment in the state to 8,000 crore rupees. This set the seal on Tamil Nadu's booming manufacturing sector, which has already seen investments from companies like Taiwanese electronics major Foxconn, Godrej and concrete machinery maker Schwingstetter.
We thought that we should be building more facility, assembly plants, fabrication plants, to meet our own internal requirements for the increasing number of machineries. We will be investing for the 2 sheds with the machineries. We will be requiring at least another 300 crores.
Altogether, the state government estimates that its manufacturing sector has attracted investment proposals worth 2.97 lakh crore rupees in the last 2 years alone. This tally isn't entirely surprising, given that the state is a manufacturing powerhouse, accounting for not only the largest number of factories in India, but also half of the country's entire female workforce. But if there's one sector that's quietly seen its equity increase in the state, it's the market for global capability centers, or GCCs. In just the last couple of months, Hitachi inaugurated its largest global technology center, and logistics major UPS inaugurated its first global technology center in India. UPS is doubling down on this, promising to invest $15 to $20 million in India by 2025, and a significant portion of this likely to be in Chennai.
We are on track to hire over 300 people by the end of this year. As I committed back in March, we will still be hiring about 1,000 people by 2025. And as we start growing the business, I'm certain that we will look at other options to even expand beyond that.
Hitachi Energy's GCC investment is part of a larger strategic play.
There is no doubt that we see India as playing a key role and eventually also a leading role to help the entire energy transition in terms of supply chain, not only engineering, but also technology, manufacturing, production, and services that will be needed.
An EY report sees India's GCC market more than double from $45 billion today to $110 billion by 2030, aided by the ready availability of talent and the heavy presence of industries in Tamil Nadu. So the state's Global Investor Summit could well see investments in GCCs and manufacturing go hand in hand. In Chennai, Jude Sanith.
A Global Capability Centre is a big bet for MNCs operating here in India. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news will continue here on CNBC-TV18. Have a great weekend. See you on Monday.